Yep, so we're excited that you all are here. We are gonna go ahead and get started in a second. We're gonna give you all the opportunity to ask questions. We hope that this is a conversation and a two-way conversation, not just the students talking at you, the current student leaders. So we're gonna start with some introductions and we have some questions to prompt them. This session is also recorded and will be posted in Duke groups afterwards. So we'll be able to catch the information there as well. So without further ado, I'm gonna turn it over to the great and illustrious Tierra Beck-Scott to get us going.
Hey everybody, so I think we're going to start with some panelist introductions. I'll start by introducing myself. Love how that worked out. Hey everybody, I am Tierra Beck-Scott. I'm the Associate Director of the student engagement, on the student engagement team on the side of involvement, which means that I work very closely with Duke Student Government and DUU, and our team also supports GPSC and DuArt. So every major umbrella organization on campus is supported by our office, and you will get to hear from our panelists to hear a little bit more about that and themselves as well. So I will turn it over to Isan.
Oh, hi everyone, I'm Isan. I'm a rising junior. As you can see, I'm the external vice president for DOU. I'm also the president of Duke Amon Chorus, and I have a bunch of other involvements that we probably will get to talk about tonight. I use she, her, hers, and I'm super excited to talk to you guys tonight.
Hi everyone, I'm Matthew Griffin, he, him, his. I am editor of the Duke Chronicle, which is, in case any of you don't know, the student newspaper, and you should all be checking out our website for updates on all the random stuff that happens this summer. And yeah, I'm just excited to get to talk about my experience.
That quote's not fake because we're not going back in person. So just wanted to put that out there. Hi, everyone. I'm Ashrey. I'm a rising junior, he, him, his pronouns. I'm the Duke Student Government Vice President of Academic Affairs. It's a long title. You can forget about it. And I'm also the co-chair of the 2021 Student Advisory Board with Isan, who's also a member on it. So yeah, super excited to be here and looking forward to our chat today. Thank you.
Hey everyone, I'm Arthi. I use she, her, hers pronouns. I'm currently the Executive Vice President of DUU. I also used to be on the leadership team for Project Build, which is a pre-orientation program. I'm a senior. I don't know if I said that.
Okay, that's my face. Okay. Hi y'all, I am Tatiana Richardson. I am a rising senior. I use she, her, hers pronouns. I am a lot of things. Wow, I didn't realize I listed so many. But most importantly for y'all probably is I'm a peer advisor, which means any questions you guys have about your classes, I know that's particularly probably on your mind right now with registration coming up. I'm happy to try and help answer. I also do a bunch of other stuff, which I'm sure we'll get into, but I don't want to bore you with like my resume.
Awesome. So just to get us started, so to warm you all up, I will ask our first question. And if someone would like to ask a question, can they put it in the chat? And I believe Jordan is moderating, so he'll give us a heads up so we know that it's there. Awesome. So first question for our panelists. Can you tell me about how you all got connected to the organizations you are involved in at Duke? Open floor, whoever wants to go first.
I can go, that's fine. So before I came to Duke, well, incoming to Duke, I did a pre-orientation program called Project Build with Arthi. And it was a great way for me to learn about what all the different opportunities and programs Duke had. And I was able to meet a lot of students in DUU, which I think is my primary thing that I do at Duke. And a lot of the students that I met that were in DUU were people that I immediately looked up to and I immediately became friends with. So I knew that that was a place that I wanted to be a part of. A lot of other things, it sounds funny, but kind of just fall into your lap at Duke. You walk around and you might see somebody tabling, which is when they bother you on the stretch from West Union to the BC. And you might see them tabling and they'll be like, oh, hey, are you interested in reproductive health? Well, come, let's talk about this. And then boom, then you're at an interest meeting. So Duke is kind of a place where a lot of things fall into your lap quite easily. So I wouldn't get too bogged down about trying to find something, because usually what you're meant to be in will find you.
Yeah, I can really speak to things just falling into your lap. I mean, I tried out so many student groups my first semester at Duke, most of which did not stick the landing, and did not necessarily expect the Chronicle to be the one that did. I knew that I liked writing. I thought, oh, journalism sounds fun. I'd never done anything like it before. And I think I went to an open house, an interest meeting, and then just picked up my first story. And it was, I was reporting on a rally / protest at what's now the Classroom building on East Campus, but was back then the Carr building. It was named after a really nasty white supremacist guy. And so people were rallying to change the name. And that was just really cool to get to write about that and see it. And I fell in love with it. And now here I am. So just don't be afraid to take the plunge and dive into things, because probably something that you never expected will end up defining your Duke experience.
I think I would also add to that, like, one way to kind of find your places, or like where you're meant to be, is also kind of like bringing things with you from where you come from and like who you are. So for example, like one of the things that I'm really involved in is like a campus ministry group, and like faith is something that I've had for like, you know, almost my whole life. So Duke also offers you options to kind of like continue things like that, or even like affinity groups based on, you know, culture or race and ethnicity and things like that. And not that those have to become your whole personality, but I think they do help, especially like in the beginning of like your first couple of semesters, to kind of always be like friendly faces or people who have like, you know, just nice similar like backgrounds or values to you, and create like open spaces.
I would also say like the student activities fair, which will be virtual this year, but like that was really, really helpful for me, which Tiara and her team put on. For me, it's a cute little story. Christina Smith, who used to be the Duke Student Government president, was also a builder. She was there tabling for DSG, for Duke Student Government. And I went up there, you know, it was like a little first year, and I was like not sure what to do, DSG or DUU. And so I went up to her, and she actually gave a very unbiased answer. What she said is that if you really enjoy the policy side of things, go for DSG. If you enjoy the more programming things that you probably did in high school and student council, go for DUU. I applied for DUU. I got rejected from the first year intern program that Isan was a part of and made the cohort. And so I just got into DSG. So it's okay to also have rejection. And I am so glad that I went with DSG, because it's become my home since, and I can't imagine who I'd be without DSG. It's like we're one and the same. So yeah, that's kind of my backstory about how I got involved with DSG, at least, and that's become my big thing.
That was not the year I was in charge of the program, I have to say. But actually, my story is like the flip side of Shrey's. I went in thinking, so I did student council in high school, thought DSG might be up my alley because student council was our student government. Kudos to DSG people, that's not my vibe. Definitely more of a DUU girl, obviously, but I was also slightly harassed by a fellow builder. His name was Brian. He did end up serving as DUU president, but he was like, hey, Arthi, it was at the activities fair. He was like, hey, Arthi, and I was trying to like avoid eye contact, didn't work. He gave me like a bunch of free like promo stuff, like stickers, and then I was like, oh, okay, bye. And then, but I went back to my room and read through all the like the flyers he gave me, and I did end up applying to the first year internship program, which is how I got into DUU. But activities fair was also how I got into, you know, my club sports team and joining some other clubs and stuff like that. So I'm really excited that that's still going to be a thing, even though virtual, so you guys can hear about all these different organizations on campus.
Yeah, just as a plug, there are a number of first-year internship programs that you will all have access to. So be on the lookout. I imagine they'll be promoting them at the activities fair. So look at all these leaders that came out of them. So the next question is, what about the environment at Duke makes getting involved something students seek to do?
I feel like Duke students are really passionate. And so they're really driven and really passionate. And for that reason, there are already a ton of clubs on campus and student orgs that kind of, you can find a place where your passion kind of fits. And the cool thing is, if you can't find that type of organization, I feel like Duke allows you to create that group then. You might have to jump through some hoops, but you're able to make a group and find other people who share those passions with you. And it makes you, it's nice to feel that your interests are valued and other people on campus share them with you. So I think that's part of the reason why everyone's really involved, because we're just so driven to act on those interests, I think.
Yeah, I think a piece of this is really the type of student that Duke admits as an undergrad institution, right? I think we just naturally tend to attract students who are very involved in their extracurricular activities back in high school. Obviously students who are also top of their class, like good in academics, but I think it's just unique about Duke's undergraduate population that a lot of our students were very immersed in at least one extracurricular back in high school, and a lot of students really want to carry that over. So, I mean, I cannot name literally a single student that I know at Duke, especially in undergrad, who isn't involved pretty heavily with at least one extracurricular on campus. And I see some nodding here. So yeah, I do think that it's really also just the type of student that Duke as an institution attracts, and also the type of student that we admit.
All right. Wanted to answer Joanna's question. What are ways that first years can get involved with student government and other leadership positions on campus?
I'll go again. I can touch Duke Student Government super quickly, and then I'm sure other people will have stuff to add on. With Duke Student Government, it's very similar to kind of traditional high school student body elections, where in your case, we'd be running for a class position, which means that the first year entire class votes you in. We have 5 different committees. You can check them out at dukestudentgovernment.org. And so you just pick a committee, you basically run. So it'll be a virtual campaign this year, which will be a little bit odd, but you just kind of go on Facebook, change your profile picture, have your friends change theirs, etc., and just go and campaign. And then what will happen is when election season kind of comes around, the entire first year class will get a link to vote on Duke Groups, actually, which is the same place where you can see the different student orgs. And also that's where the activities fair is going to be hosted this year. So on Duke Groups, you'll just be able to go and vote for people based on committee. And it's 2 people, 2 first years per committee. And so that's 10 people total. So you can either run, or you can also apply at large, which is the second avenue to get involved in Duke Student Government. I actually personally didn't run until this year. So my first year and my sophomore year, I applied in at large, which is just an application process. Jump through those hoops, write up an application, submit it. I think we pretty much guarantee an interview because we want to get to know people face to face, or Zoom to Zoom, I guess, this year. And so we'll really kind of connect with you as an executive board and just chat and see kind of where your interests lie. And if you're a good fit, again, kind of you get involved with Duke Student Government that way. The last avenue, I know this is a little bit confusing. I'm happy to chat afterwards if people have follow-up questions, but there's also an ad hoc senator position, which means that you're not at large. At large and elected are both the same on paper. So you can be elected, you can be at large. You're both going to have the same full responsibilities, be in Duke Student Government Senate, which is the big body that convenes and votes on, big decisions on behalf of the student body. But you can also be ad hoc, which is where you just work on project work that you see fit, and you only attend committee meetings. You don't attend the full DSG Senate. So those are the 3 different ways to get involved. DukeStudentGovernment.org will have the latest information. So that should hopefully help with a DSGN. And I'll open it up here for people to add on.
I was just going to throw in also, like, thinking outside of student government but still in leadership. One way to get involved is your freshman house council. And so your house council would be, you would still run, and people in your dorm or your house would vote. And the way it works, or like kind of what you would do, is house council is responsible for creating events or helping to kind of decide what Duke students call swag your dorm will get. So whether that's t-shirts or sweatshirts or sweatpants or whatever it may be, house council is kind of the people who come up with that. And in extreme situations, but doesn't usually happen, like if something goes wrong in the dorm or like rules have to be applied, House Counsel also works with like your graduate resident or your faculty in residence to kind of decide like how to handle a situation. And so it is a little bit less formal than student government, but if you kind of want a leadership role that is maybe not necessarily feeling as daunting or like out in the public, I would say that House Counsel is a good place to start.
That's a great suggestion.
Hopping in about DUU. With DUU, there are two main ways that you can get involved. You can go the route that Arthi and I did, which is apply for the first year internship program, which pairs you with a committee chair and you'll serve on this committee. DUU has, and I might be wrong on this, so Arthi, you might have to check me. DUU has 13 programming committees and I think 4 or 5 non-programming committees. And each of these committees serve as kind of their own, I don't want to say club, but we have a recording studio, we have Free Water Presentations that puts on movies, we have Free Water Productions that creates movies, Viz Arts, which does a lot of, they do galleries and they do different arts programming, Duke at Night does trivia. So all the committees do different things, so you get paired as a first year with a committee chair and kind of work alongside them for that year, learning the ropes and kind of setting yourself in a position to where you will continue on in that committee, or you can join another committee. The other way that students get involved is literally just joining a committee. On our website, which I can drop in the chat, if you go to the Get Involved page, there's like a little, I call it a little quiz, but you can just select. So if you're interested in large scale programming and you know you want to help put on concerts, then you know you're going to want to go to campus concerts or the last day of classes committee. Or if you're more interested in intimate gatherings, or if you want to do art, so you can select what most interests you, and then it'll tell you, oh, these are the committees that might be good for you. And all of the contact information for committee chairs, for Arthi and I and other people who aren't committee chairs, is all on the website. So literally you can just shoot anyone an email and they'll get back to you. DUU loves when first years want to get involved. We love first years, so please reach out to us.
Awesome. There's a question in the chat. Can someone explain the difference between DUU, Duke University Union, and DSG, Duke Student Government?
I can start by explaining DUU, Duke University Union. It is mainly an umbrella organization, Duke University Union as a whole, and we have about 17 committees that fall under the larger brand of DUU. And so we have programming and media committees, which is what Isan was saying, we have 13 of those. And each of these committees have kind of their own personality, I guess, their own little niche on campus. So like she was saying, for example, Duke at Night, they like to do a lot of like late night-ish type of programming, which can be trivia on Thursdays is something they normally do, and karaoke on Fridays, as well as some other like larger scale programming. Like every month we have Small Town Records, which is a student record label. We have the Coffee House, which is located on East Campus and is like an actual coffee house where you can get food. Not exactly sure how that'll work this year, but and they also have local or they have small artists come in for concerts every once in a while. So we have a whole range of committees that way. And then we also have a little non-programming team, which includes marketing. We have DevOps, which is they kind of run our website and a lot of tech related aspects of DUU. And then we also have our VP suite. So I'm an executive vice president. We have the vice president of internal affairs who does a lot of internal like executive team work, but then they also run the first year internship program. Isan is the external vice president, so she's doing a lot of work collaborating between DUU and other student organizations, but also figuring out what the student body wants from us, what they need from our programming, and communicating that to the rest of DUU so we can fit the student body needs. So we put on events, basically. As we put on events, we create media, songs, videos, shows, all those things. I can let Shrey handle DSG, but they're actually very different, even though it's kind of confusing at first to separate them.
Yeah, I think Arthi put it really well. If I can summarize it in one sentence, DUU does programming, DSG does policy. To elaborate a little bit more, what Duke Student Government does is we are a body which represents the undergraduate student body overall. So we have, as I mentioned, 5 different committees. I'll walk them through super quick. We have Academic Affairs, which is all about the undergraduate education experience. We have Campus Life, which is the traditional KVIL and kind of student life type of thing. We have Durham and Regional Affairs, which is looking at Duke's relationship with Durham and continuing to strengthen that as much as possible. Equity and Outreach, which is pretty self-explanatory, a lot about diversity, equity, and inclusion. And then lastly, but definitely not least, Services and Sustainability, which is more about the on-campus services. So you think the dining services, housing to a certain extent, the parking and transportation, our bus service, et cetera. These 5 committees each do their own individual policy project work with Duke administrators, right? So for example, David Pittman, right, who is in UCAE, our Campus Life team, who's headed up with by Ramya, our VP of Campus Life, they are gonna work a lot with David, for example, on just different UCAE matters, right? So what we do is we work with different administrators across the university on policy changes that the student body wants to see. So it's very much a feedback loop where as the student body wants to see some change made, DSG goes and then tries to execute it. How the structure works behind DSG, as I mentioned, you have ad hoc senators, which are assigned to each and every committee, and they just work on their own individual project work. You have at-large and elected senators from each class. Those are also a part of each individual committee, and they comprise of the full kind of Senate body that meets every Wednesday evening. Then you have our executive branch, which is all of the VPs. These vice presidents are elected by the full student body, not just by a single class. And then you also have our executive vice president and then the president of the student body or the DSG president. The role is one and the same. So that's kind of how DSG works. We also have other kind of ad hoc, not branches, but I guess like pieces, committees to us. So for example, the Student Wellness Advisory Committee is also a branch of DSG. The line monitors in KVIL are also technically a branch of DSG. So we have these other pieces to us as well. SOFC, which a lot of you will get to know the acronym, our Student Organization Finance Committee, I think. They are the ones who handle all of the different club funding on campus. They're also a part of DSG. So you'll get to see kind of how this all plays together. In terms of what DSG really does, as I mentioned earlier, we really try to make change on behalf of the student body. I'll give you all one example of something that we're doing right now. As the fall rolls around, this fall is going to be absolutely crazy. In fact, there's a piece going out tomorrow in the Chronicle, so check out dukechronicle.com, which Matthew and team wrote on kind of all that DSG has done during the summer. So if you're curious about DSG, take a look tomorrow morning. But one of the things we're doing, active project right now, looking to the fall, is our undergraduate leave of absence policies, right? So a lot of students this fall are gonna want to take a leave of absence way more than in past. And so we have completely gutted our leave policies. And Gary Bennett, our Vice Provost for Undergraduate Education, and Mary Pat McMahon, our Vice Provost for Student Affairs, in about 2 weeks, they're gonna go live with this announcement that our leave policies are changing completely. So students will be able to be connected a lot more to campus as opposed to the past. They'll be able to remain in contact with their student groups, their advisors, things like that. They'll even be able to visit campus and all sorts of different things like that. So really, we took our leave policies, completely scrapped them, and that, along with an overhaul of the Office of Student Returns, is going to be announced. And that was a complete DSG effort. We brought this to the attention of Gary and Mary Pat. They kind of took it from there. We worked with different people across the university, and now these policies are going to go into effect. So that's just one example of really driving major change with very senior administrators at Duke, even vice presidents and above, such as the provost, or even Vincent Price, right? We meet with V. Price as well. So that's kind of a little bit about DSG and how we work and operate as a body. Hopefully that helps.
As a follow-up to the last question, I wanted to hear a little bit from Matthew and Tatiana about what leadership looks like in some of our other spaces, like through the Chronicle. I know Tatiana is involved in a ton of things, but even maybe talking about leadership opportunities within our sororities, or in our fraternity and sorority life.
Sure, I don't mind going first. So thinking about leadership kind of just like in your like everyday student orgs, and specifically fraternity and sorority life, there are several different councils, which is kind of one thing to note, and that can be kind of confusing for students to navigate. But within each of those councils, there are different kinds of executive boards and committees that oversee all of the different orgs under them. And so while each council has their own committee, those committees are responsible for coming up with larger programming. So whether that's dances or community outreach, coming up with like designs for, again, Duke swag or things like that, helping to create policies, especially when it comes to fraternity and sorority life, when it has to do with not so fun things like sexual assault policy or hazing or things like that. Those executive committees kind of are the ones who help to put those together along with advisors. And then speaking outside of that, like there's leadership in almost every student org on campus. So whether you're in a faith group, you know, they sometimes have student pastors or members who again help with programming, or thinking about just like anything from start to finish at Duke, like any group you're in, you're going to be able to find leadership. And it will look different, but it is basically just finding like a best way to be a voice for that specific community of people and kind of helping them see what they want in that group during that time and place.
Cool, and I can talk about the Chronicle because it is, it's kind of different than a lot of other leadership roles in that you're dealing with like this sort of constant stream of, it changes from day to day to day, what you do, and there's a lot of different pieces to it. So there's kind of the day-to-day work for me of like overseeing the organization. Like I read our stories before they get published, and there's a lot of just like logistics and keeping track of things and making sure people are doing the right things. But there's also kind of thinking about what do Duke students need to know. It's a very kind of overarching role in that we're not just thinking about a specific subset of students. We have an obligation to all students that in kind of the same way that DSG does. And so thinking like, okay, you know, this summer, for example, we have a limited staff. We've got to cover, we can only cover X number of stories. So what's really important and what that looks like is, you know, making sure we're on top of Duke's policies, making sure that when, you know, choices that Duke administration makes affect some students badly, that we're giving them a space to have their voices shared, that we're, you know, on top of what they're going through. And it just sort of looks like, you know, making sure all of our other sections, we have an arts and culture section that's called Recess. We have an opinion section where students can share their voices and their thoughts. We have a sports section, making sure they all have what they need and are running smoothly.
Awesome. Thank you, Matthew. There's another question in the chat. Can you all share some specific projects that you all have gotten to do through your leadership positions?
I can go again on this one. This is actually interesting in that it's not like kind of discrete projects. If you're involved in the Chronicle, there's so much you can do. I mean, before I was editor, I wrote a lot. And so that's one side of it. Like, for example, in the spring, there was a big logistical snafu where Duke had told a bunch of students from countries experiencing coronavirus outbreaks, some European countries, I think Hong Kong, and I don't remember, India maybe, that they couldn't stay on campus after campus was closed. And so then I wrote a big long story about that. And then the policy was actually in the end changed. So that's cool. Like you have an ability to really like share people's voices and do that. But then as the editor, something that we're doing right now that you will all see is a series of stories about what to expect for the fall. So we've done one about contact tracing and testing and what Duke is doing to fight the coronavirus on campus. And then one should be going up tomorrow, I think, about move-in process, how that's going to go. We did one about how to apply for housing after Duke changed course on the fall and told juniors and seniors that most of them couldn't come. So again, it goes back to like thinking about what information you want to get out there.
Anyone else want to share about some of the cool things they've gotten to do?
I can share. So last year, I was the vice president of administration for DOU. And I called myself a glorified secretary, but everyone got mad at me when I called myself that because they said I did much more than just be a secretary. But one of the coolest things about being VP is that I was allowed to put on general body meetings for the entirety of DOU. So that includes all of our exec board and all of the committee members. So I think the last time I tried to tally it up, it was like 500 plus students that could have came, but they didn't come, but they could have came. And my favorite event was that I was able to, so I could do whatever I wanted, and I decided to do kind of a wellness night for everyone. And so we all came. The Zen Succulent, which you guys will get real familiar with because we do programming with them all the time on Duke's campus. Came and we potted plants together and we had face masks, and it was just a really cool, chill vibe that I was very happy for and that I definitely needed. So I was glad that I had the opportunity and the financial backing from my club to be able to put on this event for everyone. So just a cool thing is that with a lot of organizations, the sky's kind of the limit. So whatever you think you want to do or whatever idea you might have about a program, about an initiative, about a project, all you have to do is ask, and chances are the answer probably will be yes, because Duke loves seeing new things happen, and all of our clubs love to have new initiatives.
I would say something I am kind of proud of, even though it's not necessarily a project, is when the application for the first year internship program was going out. When I was the chair of that program, T was actually my advisor at the time, and we were talking about, you know, DUU has this reputation of having this pipeline from pre-Os where it's just like we were saying, you know, upperclassmen that we know kind of drag us into like the world of DUU just by nature of knowing us before coming to school. And so we were like, that's nice, but we want to grab more students. We want more students to know that we are here for them and for their leadership development as well. So I worked hard in trying to get the application in places that it normally wasn't reaching. One place that I found a lot of traction was within the scholarship community. So really taking the time to intentionally get your application materials, your marketing materials into all areas of campus, I realized is effective and important because we got a lot of applications from demographics of students that we hadn't seen in years past. And it was just like, they also felt valued by that, because I remember hearing from people in the scholarship, they were like, we haven't been reached out to personally before, and it meant a lot that you guys did this for us. So that's always been something kind of nice, something I'm proud of from DUU leadership.
We can go on the DSG front. As I mentioned earlier, it's a lot of just policy plus project work, really trying to drive change across the university for undergraduates. So I think I've done a lot of work within like the mental health space on campus, and that's something that I'm really proud of. So I think two big things there. One was a revamp of something which used to be called the STINF, or the short-term illness notification form. That's now something called the incapacitation form, and recognizes mental health, which wasn't a valid reason before, which is when I'd stepped foot on campus, class of 2022, like as a first year. We really tried to get that changed. So that was one big thing. And then the second one is we put together this pretty massive mental health forum this past spring with Gary Bennett and Mary Pat McMahon, but also a couple of folks from our wellness space, which you'll get to know: Tom Zigathy from Do Well, Amy Powell from Duke Reach, A.Y. Bryant from CAPS, all good names and people to connect with. And so that mental health forum was really, I think, instrumental in helping destigmatize mental illness on campus, but also just sparking a conversation. And I think there've been a lot of small pieces which have come out of that. So, you know, I think one thing also, which both DSG and DUU have the privilege to do is work a bunch with random student groups, right? So because I'm interested in mental health, I also get the opportunity to work with groups like Peer for You and NAMI and NeuroCare, which are all pioneers in the mental health space on campus. So I think that's also quite rewarding, and really using our platform as Duke Student Government to help assist them in their mission, right? So I think the one last example I'll give is earlier this spring, in early March, I guess, which is when we went online as an institution and everyone was sent home. I'm sure you all know about that. At that point in time, Peer4U was only operating in an in-person model. Peer4U, just so you all know, is a kind of peer-to-peer counseling club on campus. And so because they were only there in an in-person format, we had to quickly figure out how do we get them online. And so myself and the Duke Student Government Mental Health Caucus, we worked very closely with the leadership for Peer4U, and DSG, we used our connections across different university offices, including OIT, or Office of Information Technology, to really get Peer4U quickly connected over and got them up and running with a booking system, as well as making sure that they could use Zoom and things like that. So DSG is also able to use this kind of platform and our connections and work with administrators to help out other student groups. And honestly, that's one of the most rewarding parts of the job, besides really doing our project work, is just helping empower our fellow peers and student groups on campus. So those are a couple of the different projects that I've done personally in the past 2 years.
Awesome. Thank you all for sharing. So we know that everyone has been impacted by COVID, and I want to hear you share, what ways have you all seen your various organizations thrive and seek to build community during this time?
I think for me, the two biggest organizations and groups that have really worked on building community through this time is, again, my church group. So we've moved to online worship every Sunday, and generally during the summers, we kind of will all just disperse to our separate corners of the world, and we'll come back in August super excited to see everybody and start worship up again. But because of so much uncertainty and everybody feeling just so kind of floating in an unknown space, we decided to have worship throughout the whole summer. So we've had worship every Sunday basically since Duke told us to go home. And so that's been a really nice way kind of to, again, just see friends and have something that feels familiar, even if it is slightly different. And along with that, my sorority, and I'm a member of Zeta Phi Beta Sorority Incorporated, and it's one of the historically Black sororities, but is open to anyone. But so our organization has done a lot of media campaigns throughout this time, which doesn't sound like community building at first, but a lot of it has been geared towards the unrest or the protests that have been happening throughout the countries about various racist or unfair aspects in the country. And so that's helped us to build a lot of community, and not only within our chapter and our organization, but also kind of the people who are getting to see the programming that we're doing, we're getting a lot of good feedback. And so it's one way I think that has helped us feel kind of productive, even being, in quarantine, or not all of us necessarily being able to go out and protest. It's a way to kind of still have a voice. And so I think that those have been two really big things for me.
This is one of the ones that a question that's really interesting for me with the Chronicle, because there's kind of the two parts of it, of sort of thriving and building community. And in terms of thriving, I mean, you can't think of a more important time to be a student journalist. I mean, there's so many stories to tell. There's so many important stories to tell. People have been writing more than ever before, both in the spring and then over the summer while they've had other jobs. I mean, you've got to hold Duke administration accountable. You've got to make sure that someone is there to document what this is like for students. So I would say, thriving kind of goes without saying. This is kind of the big leagues. In terms of, though, building community is tough because you're separate on Zoom. And so that's been kind of we have an annual formal event that we did on Zoom. So moving some of that stuff online, and then just taking the time to be deliberate about when you're doing work, making sure that you don't just fall into only working with people, only texting people about things that they have to do, making some of those things Zoom calls, and kind of connecting with people on a human level. But I'd say we've kind of never been closer, because the work that we're doing is suddenly so interesting and so important.
I would say on DUU's end, we actually, as a new executive committee, have never met in person because we were transitioning right as we were sent home. But despite that, I feel like our exec team feels really close, and we have a really large team as well. It's like 23 people. And Isan can correct me if you feel otherwise, but I feel like we already feel like a family. And that's really impressive considering we've never met in person as a group. And personally, I feel I'm really impressed by our team because they've been really creative and adaptable in a time where we've had to completely reimagine everything that we've done in the past however many years, because we can't do any programming in person, you know, throughout quarantine, and then also going into the fall semester, we have to plan for everything virtually until, you know, we're told otherwise. But all these chairs who didn't really sign up for their job to exactly be this way have been making it work. And they've all been doing it really gracefully. And so I think we've been able to bond over the fact that we're going through this really interesting special time together. And we're learning a lot, and we're all growing as leaders and as people. So even though it's a sucky situation overall, I am actually extremely happy to still be a part of this team and to be able to go through it during COVID.
I think from the Duke student government end, to answer both questions like thriving versus building community, I think one of the things that we can all agree on here, DUU, DSG Chronicle, et cetera, is that we really see a big lull in the summer, right? Like Chronicle isn't publishing nearly as many stories. DUU and DSG just aren't doing nearly as much work. I have never seen Duke student government be busier, especially our executive board. People are working 40, 60, 80, 100 hours a week. From a Duke student government end, just on various things as they come up, especially related to fall plans. So in terms of thriving, I mean, I think thriving and building community actually go hand in hand. I mean, you know, students don't often do, especially like in, you know, like nitty gritty policy work, like my committee is doing, for example, on our fall calendar, as well as SU policy. We just published an op-ed in the Chronicle yesterday, take a look. But, you know, we rarely do this type of like nitty gritty policy work, especially with administrators over the summer. And so I think we are not only thriving because it's been just so many long hours and so much work to be done, really all, shameless plug, exactly, really all across the university, but also that's brought us closer together, right? Like we all understand that it's such a tough time and there's a lot to be done on behalf of our student body. And so I think that's just I think that in and of itself, just build community for DSG way before we got to campus. So yeah, I think that overall it's been a busy summer, but I think especially, you know, doing mental health check-ins and things like that, and talking raw and honestly also about where people's heads are at and how they're feeling. And I think setting this culture within DSG and within our committees of it's okay to, you know, say that things aren't well and, you know, be vulnerable. And I think that's also helped kind of us thrive and also build community and just come closer together while also doing some awesome work.
Awesome. So a lot of people think student leadership is something you engage in with solely outside of the classroom. How have you all connected the work you do outside of the classroom with your coursework and your academic, and I'm going to add professional pursuits to that?
Well, this is one thing that really goes to show why you shouldn't be afraid to just jump into some student groups and try things you wouldn't have tried otherwise. Because if I hadn't walked into the Chronicle office and picked up that one story about the protests, I mean, my whole career and academic path would be different, because it actually, like, my work in the Chronicle has pushed me to pick up a journalism certificate in addition to my major. And then now I'm actually, I want to go into a career in journalism. And so I'm working an internship at the Charlotte Observer this summer, but then that in turn gives me a lot of good experience that goes into my work for the Chronicle. So you just, you know, you never know what'll happen. And Duke is the kind of place where there are just so many academic opportunities that what you do as a student group might determine your academic path more than the other way around.
I can definitely second Matthew's sentiment. So I came into Duke as a bio major. I will be graduating from Duke as a double major in religion and African American studies with a minor in Call-Land. So completely opposite side of the spectrum. And some of that definitely had to do with like the groups and organizations that I was in. So like I said, like having weekly worship and conversations, kind of realizing that like there needs to be more equity and justice, not in STEM fields, but in the humanities too. And kind of also finding like spaces where I enjoyed like discussing those conversations and like I was enjoying those classes the most. And so that definitely kind of led to me switching over completely. And along that path, I've been able to serve in leadership roles, not only in my church group, but also like in various academic settings. I found myself kind of, having better conversations or enjoying those more. And it's ultimately culminated in me like writing a senior thesis and like attempting to graduate with honors. And so that's a really big thing, and is also like culminated in me wanting to get a PhD in theology. So definitely like the organizations or the spaces that you can inhabit may end up informing, kind of the path you're going down, which sounds really scary, but is actually a great time when you're in the middle of it, I promise.
I can talk about it. I don't think there's an interview that I've done, whether that be for a job interview, for another club, for a committee, that I haven't mentioned my work with DUU, and then I haven't been able to say, oh, well, I put on this program or I helped do this. And they're like, oh my gosh, tell me more. And so it has allowed me a lot of opportunity. Shreya and I have worked together so much this year, and we've really become close friends just because of the sheer amount of committees that we've been able to serve on, just because we were in positions in DUU and DSG, and we're able to get in contact with administrators. And because of all of that, I've been seriously thinking about, do I want to continue with a job in higher education? Is this something that I can see myself doing? Or is it something that I want to try out? So I would have never, ever thought about having a minor in education, first of all, or even thinking about pursuing a job in higher education if it hadn't been for being in DUU and having this position to be able to interact with admin as I've been able to.
I also think something really amazing about leadership opportunities on campus is that we have a lot of direct contact with administration and people like T. And I know Nicole just left, but she is an advisor in new student programs. So I communicated a lot with her for Project Build when I was running that. And that kind of helps you boost your confidence a lot in talking to adults. I know I would tell T like, oh, you're an adult. And she's like, you're an adult too. And I'm like, no, you're an adult. So I think these leadership opportunities have really helped me gain confidence in myself and in articulating my ideas, my opinions, my needs to people, I guess, who are like higher than me or, are more educated, more experienced than me in certain aspects, but still respecting what my opinions are. So that's been really awesome. You don't always get that in leadership experiences, I feel like. So that's a really cool thing about Duke leadership and student orgs and stuff like that, because even if they're older than you, even if they're more experienced than you, they're really going to value what you say and they're going to help you grow in that sense.
Yeah, and just to kind of round us out, I think very similar sentiments. I came in as a biomedical engineer in the Pratt School of Engineering, and now I'm graduating, major in public policy, minor in computer science, right? And it's like a massive shift. And a lot of that was because of DSG. Like I explored kind of this policy side, especially my first year fall, and I loved it. I mean, I've never looked back since, and no longer am I pre-med to my mother's dismay, but nonetheless, we will all thrive. In terms of professional interests, I think one of the things which was hinted on by the four folks on the panel as well is that student leadership just gives you so many different transferable skills, right? Like that's a big like resume term out there of like, what are the transferable skills you get? But like genuinely, I mean, being a new student government, like running projects from end to end, creating a project plan, creating high-level strategies, gathering and presenting data very effectively, working with senior executives, right? Like VPs and above. I mean, that's a pretty big deal. So I think there's so many different transferable skills that you get and all sorts of different student leadership opportunities. There's no one perfect avenue. The skills you're gonna get in DUU, like Arthi can draw, like, and be so creative. Like I mean, she knows this, like I cannot draw for crap, right? Like I literally cannot like draw a car for you or anything. So there's just all sorts of different skills that you get depending on the different organizations that you're a part of. And you can take that on and continue with it and thrive with it, right? I mean, Matthew's a perfect example of really shifting his academic path and going into student journalism now. So I would say there's so many different kind of parallels between what you do outside of the classroom and what you do inside of the classroom.
Yeah, Shreya, I came in as a public policy major, so I'm what you are now. I went even further into the humanities.
I love it. I love it.
Also, just like as a quick side note, I know a lot of us like have said we came in one thing and are like possibly leaving something else. I promise there are people who come to Duke and like stay on the path that they're on, and that's okay. So this is not a plug to completely change your life goals. But if it does happen, that's okay too.
It's all about the journey, all about the journey. Well, we have about 4 minutes left, so I'm gonna challenge you all to answer this next question with a phrase, maybe, if you can. If you could offer one piece of advice for incoming students who are interested in pursuing student leadership opportunities at Duke, what would it be?
One word, bold. And if it's 2 words, it's be bold. Anything can be in your reach.
I'm going to be a little bit wordier and have a whole sentence, which is go for it, because you often don't have to have any past experience. And what I didn't have any journalism experience.
I'm gonna say pace yourself. Everything that is meant for you will be for you.
I would say find what's life-giving. So whatever leadership roles you're in, make sure that they bring you joy and give you life, not make you feel exhausted and like it's a chore.
And I would say don't be afraid to challenge yourself and make yourself slightly uncomfortable in whatever opportunity you're seeking.
Can I just say, like, y'all are amazing? Thank you for such like really awesome way to end that. Y'all met the challenge better than I could have even guessed. So I'm gonna turn it back over to Jordan. Thank you all so much. This has been awesome. What a quick hour.
Yeah, that was great. And y'all, T gave y'all 4 minutes at the end. Y'all did it in 2 minutes. So not only do you listen to instructions, but you're really efficient with your time. Thank you to all the incoming first-year students and other students. Might be some transfers on here too who jumped in. Again, this is going to be recorded and posted as soon as we get the captions back so we can practice accessibility. I can't thank T enough for jumping in here. I can't thank the students on the panel enough for jumping in and splitting up. And I'm just really appreciative of y'all. Y'all are making a difference for incoming first-year students in ways that you can't quantify. So I really just appreciate it. It's 9 o'clock Eastern time. I'm about to go read Corduroy to my son and go take a nap. So y'all have a great evening. And if you need anything, email any of the students on this panel. They'd be a great resource for you and happy to help. Stay out of trouble and see y'all in a couple of days.
Bye, everyone.
Bye,
Thanks,
everybody.
Jordan. Bye, everyone.
Bye.